Yes, I could have paid it. It's $140, but it's the principle behind the situation.
Can you imagine you go to work and you don't even get your paycheck because they're able to garnish a certain
See,
percentage of
that's
your
what
paycheck?
So I have student loans and I purposely try to not pay it off all at one time, and this is the reason why.
Okay, well, I am back with my normal setup, and today I have a video that I think is pretty divisive because from what we've seen in previous credit card debt videos and just recently with Black Friday, honestly just not having great deals for anybody. But if you went out, it didn't really look like too many people were hurting for money, so that ends up turning into a little bit more credit card debt than the record highs we see. But we're going to talk about people straight up just not paying their debts off. We have different types of loans, we have different reasonings, and we're going to see some of the consequences of not paying off your debt on purpose, along with some comments from previous videos. So if you want to be featured on a future video, leave it in the comments down below. But we're going to start off with a big one that a lot of people have, and that is student loans.
So I have student loans and I purposely try to not pay it off all at one time, and this is the reason why. If you have student loans that have a low interest, for me that's 3.84%, then it's better to pay the minimum while investing at the same time. The reason for that is because you want to take advantage of the time that you have investing while you're young. So for example, the S&P 500 returns 10% annually. If my student loans are at a 3.84% in interest, then I would be earning more investing my money. On top of that, my high yield savings account is earning more interest than my student loans. For me, I bank with PNC and I'm earning about 5% on my high yield savings. If you don't know how to invest and you want to get started, the best way I would go about it is by opening up a Roth IRA and investing in index funds such as the S&P 500. Some examples of this are VOO, FXIAX, and SPY. If you have low interest debt, I advise that you start investing at the same time. If you can spend $50 going out, then you can surely spend $50 on an index fund.
So I can understand this both ways, but with the interest rate on loans, I could only really speak on my experiences and what I looked up. At the time, my loans were at about 7%. I don't really know if it's too common to get that low of an interest rate. 3% seems pretty low because when I looked it up as of 2024-2025 school year, average federal student loan interest rate for undergrad students was 6.5, and then graduate students was about 8%. So I know way more people are talking about investing in the stock market, and it's not like I don't. Seeing 25% returns, I mean, just in the past 4 or 5 years in general, how much the stock market has gone up. But mainly investors' goals are around 8 to 10% per year. So the graduate student average interest rate at 8% is kind of a wash, and it wouldn't really be worth it. And you also see some comments like this: smart, but for me, I prefer to just get it done with. And I think having that pressure off of people, especially in today's world where debt is so common, I know in the long run will probably make you less money if you are investing earlier, but I feel like that peace of mind for somebody's mentality will also help you in the long run. But I think the second sense a lot of people will also get on board with: if you pick stocks, the market in general is great, up 33% last year. And again, I know it's been doing really well for the past 4 to 5 years, but normally it's not really that easy to just click a button and it goes up that drastically. So it is a bit of a dangerous game. Not saying it's a bad idea to invest in the stock market, but we have another comment: I just got my student loans over with and can still invest. And the next comment was talking about high yield savings accounts, which are also variable, at least at the time that she recorded. High yield savings accounts were around 5%. Most of them are now sitting at around the 4% range and are probably going to get lower with more of the Fed rate cuts. So it's not something you could consistently rely on for decades and decades. It's going to change virtually every year. But for this next video, I would like to see the update in a month or two after Christmas, basically the new year, and see how bad debt is really getting for people.
Mortgages, car loans, credit cards. Americans are borrowing more than ever. U.S. household debt now at $17.94 trillion. For credit cards, that debt has never cost more. The average interest rate almost 22%, way higher than auto loans and mortgage rates. Jamie Parker is chipping away at her part of the record $1.17 trillion Americans now hold in credit card debt.
I was in about $60,000 worth of debt when this all started, just to be able to live for the year with my kids.
Jamie is now in a program to help clear her debt, paying off 2 big cards at $535 a month for the next 5 years. Her experience showing how with rates so high, even a little debt can spiral. Experts recommend paying more than the minimum payment, consider zero-interest balance transfer offers, and work with a credit counselor to consolidate debt.
So unfortunately, I bet it's gotten a little bit worse for some people just over this past weekend for Black Friday. But when you start getting into the rabbit hole on TikTok talking about death, you start seeing some very odd posts. Here we could see 4 reasons to not pay off debt. The first one, you have a vacation, wedding, or baby coming soon. So right off the bat, we've talked about both wedding debt and vacation debt, people putting themselves in a financial hole for both of them, whether it be a vacation that you clearly can't afford, but you just have to go on vacation during the summer. I mean, how are you going to relieve stress, even though you're just adding more stress onto your life by going into debt? Same thing with the wedding, spending 5, sometimes 6 figures on a wedding, even though one of the major contributors for divorce is money issues. So putting yourself in a hole at the very beginning of your marriage is definitely not a good thing. Same thing with the baby. I mean, I guess you'd have to start preparing and buying all that you need to take care of it, but it seems to be pretty common now to hold off having a baby to get your finances in order. Second, you don't have an emergency fund, which I do understand that to a point, but I've also seen people just save and save and save as their interest in their credit card debts are at around 25-30%, actually even higher than the last clip. I've seen as high as 35% on some credit cards now, but some will end up over saving on their emergency fund and making their debt way worse than it actually needed to be. Number 3, again, is all your debt is low interest, which on top of it, at least in this market, we're seeing the 6.5 to 8% with student debt. We saw, I guess the average is 21 for credit card debt, even though I've seen 25, 30, 35. We were seeing car loans at around 8%, but I'm also seeing some double digits, 10, 11%. And then basically the best you could get for mortgages are at around 7% right now. So seems to be a bit more uncommon to find low interest debt now, and especially with snowballing, it could get way worse. And the last one, your basic needs aren't being met. And again, I understand this. Of course, I'd rather rack up $10,000 or $100,000 in credit card debt than die. But there is a fine line of what we've seen, especially in my generation around the Gen Z era. Basic needs could end up becoming the wannabe lifestyles of what we see influencers do online, turns into doom spending, and your basic needs kind of get blown out of proportion. So when you see relatable TikToks like this with bad financial decisions that could also add on top of it with the lifestyles, when I don't understand how I haven't paid off my debt yet, but I have 2 trips in the next month and planning a 3rd. But it's okay, I used a TikTok song to try to get likes and attention online, even though I'm putting myself in a financial hole. And they always want the comments with the same people who are agreeing with their bad decisions. How validating. Great points, even though they weren't great points at all. But we have some comments from you guys. I refuse to live within my means, so I'm going to complain to strangers on the internet. Unbelievable. And that's what we saw in some of the interviews with CNBC. What I find amazing is the people who make these videos seem to be proud of this instead of being completely embarrassed. And it's just the first time they see somebody making these types of relatable videos talking about debt who get hundreds of thousands of views or likes or millions, and they just have a lot of attention, and others want to have the same, and they end up oversharing probably their bad decisions or enabling it for more people just to try to make that video and get that same dopamine hit of the likes and followers and views. So now we could see some of the consequences for you purposely not paying off your debt.
Some student loan borrowers are refusing to pay out of protest. The article says millions of borrowers with existing student loans still have not made a payment since the bills resumed in October after a 3-year hiatus. And some admit that they're refusing to pay for spite, like strictly out of protest.
You. How long does this protest last before they start cracking on them?
Well, you know, the first thing that happens is like when you don't pay your bill, it's like, okay, you're late. There's fees, 6% in some cases. Then you go into default. And if you stay in default for long enough, then you go from owing what your missed payments were to owing the entire balance right up front. Like it escalates very quickly. And what happens there is when that takes place, it's like, all right, you're not going to be able to ever qualify. Not that I think that you need to, but you take yourself out of the running to ever qualify for any payments, forbearance, deferment ever again, because you've poo-pooed on it and said, you know, you've basically given the government the finger. And so at that point, you've truly screwed yourselves in many ways. Yeah. And I'm like, can you imagine you go to work and you don't even get your paycheck because they're able to garnish a certain percentage of your paycheck?
That's what people don't realize.
Yeah, they can take they can hold your passport.
You know what? And while you're protesting, they can do those things to you.
And the thing is, you think that these people are losing sleep over this in the government? No. They don't care about that. They don't care about you.
And she is dead right. No matter how much I think student loans are a scam with how expensive they are, we've talked about it in several videos. I know. I call myself lucky because I ended up dropping out with only $20,000 worth of debt. People are in hundreds of thousands with a degree that's meaningless or won't pay off to try to get out of student debt. And I know it's a really crappy situation, but in the end, we all still made the decision to take out that loan no matter how young we were and didn't realize how bad of a deal it was. And it doesn't just become something where they'll call you once every couple months or a couple weeks and go, hey, you know, you didn't pay yet, and you just hang up. They're going to start taking stuff from you. They could garnish your wages. They could take your passport. You wouldn't be able to travel outside of the country. Very dangerous. And they don't care about you. You're just a cog in the machine, just trying to get their money back plus interest. So you not paying at a protest would hurt you in the end a lot more than the government, who is already in trillions and trillions of dollars worth of debt. I know it's not fair for us, but especially for what we see online and everybody's trying to act like an influencer who is faking their life or getting paid to promote products, life honestly just isn't fair in general. And that could be added on to this next clip for somebody who's not paying their debt off out of the principal.
Else have a debt that they just refuse to pay. Like, you are not paying unless there are some serious legal consequences. Let me tell you, I have one. It's only because of this insurance company, but it was a small bill. It was like $140. They added it to my credit. I could have been paid it. Yes, I could have paid it. It's $140. But it's the principle behind the situation why I chose to let my credit score drop. Because I did not agree with it. I did not agree with it, and I refused to pay it. I said, I'm not paying this unless there are some kind of enforceable legal consequences that will be taken. I'm not paying it. I refuse. What debt do you just refuse to pay?
So, I mean, on one hand, I could understand because I am a stubborn, hard-headed person as well. Clearly, I have a problem working for somebody else. That's why I've been doing my own thing for a number of years. I don't like being told what to do. And if somebody tries to tell me what to do, I will basically do the exact opposite out of spite. However, this kind of issue with only $140, tanking your credit score because of it out of the principal, I mean, same as the last clip. I know it sucks. It's not fair, but life isn't fair. Are you really going to have this many issues over $140? I mean, I know it's still a good amount of money, but it's not a ton of money. And I mean, just paying it off and moving on, I think, would be the more mature way to go about it. You know, you win some, you lose some. You know, some things in life just aren't really fair. You kind of just have to keep it moving. And I guess the same people are doing it with student loans and having even more consequences like we saw in the previous clip.
If your goal is to buy in 2024 and you have debt, I want you to listen to me, okay? For context, I'm a mortgage lender, so I know a thing or two about what I'm about to tell you. I have people all the time that say, all right, Jordan, I finally decided to reach out to you because I paid all of my debt off and I'm ready to move forward. And most of the time I cringe. And you may be thinking, well, Jordan, it must be a good thing that I pay all my debt off. So why would you be cringing? Because most of the time when people come to me and they say, oh, I've paid all of my debt off, it's debt that closes. And being that we live in America and the credit system makes so much sense, when you pay off an installment debt, aka student loan, mortgage, auto, personal loan, essentially anything where it has an end date and the payment is set, and you pay that off, it closes out. Unlike when you pay a credit card off and it continues to stay open as long as you don't close it out or you just stop using it and they automatically close it out. And so what happens is you pay all that debt off, and hypothetically it's a lot of installment debt, and now all of those lines of credit have gone away, and therefore all of the good payment history has gone away, and your credit score drops. So piece of advice to you, if you are at all thinking about purchasing a home and you have any sort of installment debt, if you do not need to pay it off beforehand, aka you just naturally pay it off and like make your payments, you don't force extra payments to try to get rid of this debt because you're afraid you won't qualify. Instead, I want you to talk to me and let's figure out if, one, you need to pay that debt off. And two, if you do need to pay it off, we can pay it off at closing. And if we pay it off at closing, instead of you paying it off before you come to me, It doesn't hurt your credit. And it also doesn't hurt your debt to income ratio because we are paying it off before you close. Therefore, we can exclude it from your debt. So please, please, please keep this in mind, especially if you don't have the most amazing credit score, because this will hurt you.
So I agree and disagree with this clip. She's not lying about it. When I paid off my car, it was the same thing. I think I took a credit hit for honestly like a month though. It shot right back up. So that's why I'm a little iffy. I mean, you kind of have to get really unlucky if you are looking to buy a house in 2024 or 2025, and the exact month to try to go in and get a loan is the month that your credit dips. Would probably end up hurting you, along with the last thing she said, when you already kind of have iffy credit. Now, I think in general having not the best credit is probably a pretty dangerous game if you're trying to get a loan out for a already very expensive home. I'd probably try to fix that and get the best credit score possible to at least try to get that 7 or 6.5% loan that is kind of the best option right now. Much worse than what we were seeing at around the 3% a few years ago. But I do think that this is for a specific type of person because, again, overall, I think the mentality of paying off some sort of car loan debt like this, even though you'd possibly take a credit hit, would be better for your mentality overall, especially if you are having issues with your finances. So we could end this video off with some more consequences in a place like Australia. So this isn't just a US problem.
You don't pay your debts. If the debt's high enough, they can take it to court and try and get judgment against you. It'll cost them money, so some don't do it if it's a small debt. They're likely to do it if it's a bigger debt. If you still don't pay it, they can get enforcement orders or seek enforcement orders, which means they can technically come and take your Now, because I've said this a couple of times before, some people have pulled me up and said, well, you know, can't all do that. And I said, I'm talking generally for sake. Like, they can't apparently take money out of your Centrelink if you're a Centrelink recipient, but they can take money out of your bank account. They can take money out of your wages. They can get enforcement orders to seize and sell property, so things you own. They can even sell your house up. But there's a lot of hoops I've got to jump through. So the ramifications can be serious.
So there are many different opinions and examples in this video. Very controversial, very divisive, depending on the way that you deal with your finances. But at least from what I've seen online and my personal experience, with how difficult it's becoming to survive or get a job for younger generations getting out of college with copious amounts of debt, I think having the peace of mind that more debt is off your table is still a pretty good thing for yourself in the long run. I know some things aren't fair. You got screwed with student loans, or like the guy not paying $140 out of principal. It does suck. Life's not fair, but some things could really end up hurting you for basically the rest of your life, especially student loans. You can't go bankrupt. That doesn't just disappear. It stays with you until you're in the grave. So that's all I have for you guys in this video. YouTube thinks you'll like this popping up on screen right now, but hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like, and I'll talk to you guys later.